uni knot, the one thing that I really feel like has given me advantage over the last few years is running a braid main line on a spinning application and running a fluorocarbon leader. And what I'll do, I only do this on a spinning application or top water on a bait caster. And there's several reasons. One thing about braid is that you'll get a longer cast. It's so much softer than a monofilament or especially a fluorocarbon, so you can cast a lot farther. The other advantage is zero stretch with a braid. With a monofilament or fluorocarbon, you're going to get a little bit of stretch. And with braid, by making such a long cast, when you get a bite on a long cast like that, when you set the hook, it doesn't matter if he's 100 feet away from me or if he's 5 feet away from me, I'm going to have the exact same hook set. There's zero stretch in that braid. Now, if I have monofilament and I make a 100-yard cast and the fish bites it and I set the hook, it's like fishing with a rubber band. It stretches so much that you cannot get a good hook penetration in that fish with a even a fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is better than monofilament, but you still have a lot of stretch. So I run that braid to fluorocarbon, or on a top water I run braid to a monofilament, and I'll have zero stretch. And it's really made a difference in the fishing. Now, I know a drop shot is very big out west, and if you're running a straight fluorocarbon on a drop shot, you're going to run into line twist like crazy. With braid, you will have zero line twist. You can fish the same reel for 6, 8, 9 months, and you will show zero line twist. With fluorocarbon, you can't go a day without having your line twist up. So that's been another big key for using it. To me, I've tried a bunch of knots. The best knot that I have found is the double uni knot. Now I'm going to tie it on a piece of actual boat tie-up line here so I can show you. If I tried to show you with this, it's so small you wouldn't be able to see it. Double uni knot, I always run, on a spinning application, I always run 12-pound mainline braid, and I run the 8-pound Sunline fluorocarbon. I actually use a Sunline braid that is not available in the States just yet, but it will be, I'm told, very soon. But they have other heavier braids, but they don't sell the 12-pound in the States just yet. But that has been the best one. I've tried 10 and 16, but to me, 12-pound is the best strength, castability, without being too much and without being too little. Meaning that the 8-pound was just a little too soft. It was hard to manage. It broke easier. The 16 was too heavy and it was hard to cast. So 12 has been the best one for me. I use 8-pound fluorocarbon for the leader. And what I do is I run roughly about a 7-foot leader or so, maybe a little bit more. And what I do to judge that is I take a spool line, I hold the spool in my left hand, I grab the tag in like this, I run one strip like that, I get right in the middle, and I do a half a strip. And that's about the right length for me. And the reason why I do that is when I want that knot, when I tie my leader, I want that knot to be somewhere between my reel and my first guide. If I go too long, like let's say I run a 10-foot leader or 12-foot leader, my knot is inside that spool. When you cast that, fluorocarbon is stiff, so when it jumps off that reel, it's going to come off in a big arc. And then when it hits that braid main line, braid is so smooth that it's going to shoot out of that reel. So you have this fluorocarbon running in a slower, big arc, and it hits that braid, the braid shoots out, your knot will jump like this, jump ahead, and wrap around your first guide and stop it dead in its tracks. The same way when you go to make a cast and you don't have the bail already all the way flipped over, and you make a hard cast and that bail closes and it stops and lands 2 feet in front of you. They'll do the same thing with braid. So I put that knot somewhere in between and it will never catch right there. And it's all because of that change in the composition and diameter of those two, the fluorocarbon versus the braid. It will shoot out, and I'm telling you, every time it'll catch right there. Not only will it stop it dead in the tracks, it'll burn my line and make my line weak somewhere in that joint between the fluorocarbon and the braid, to where if I just untangle it, make a couple of casts, well, that next cast I can get a bite and I set the hook and it's going to snap right there because it weakened my line. So I always do that. Now for me, that's just been the length. I run a full arm's width plus the half arm's width, and that runs it about right there. And that's running about, I typically like to cast the bait with maybe, let's say that much of line off the tip of the rod. So if I'm right here, then that's going to put my knot about right there. But that's just all personal. Whatever you guys want to try to do it. But that's just what I've done for myself to speed things up. So I have my fluorocarbon leader. I have my main line. I'm going to run the two pieces and just overlap them like this. And I always start with a braid. So this is my braid right here. This is my fluorocarbon leader. I take this braid, turn it back on itself. Now I have a loop. Now I'm going to take my tag end of my my braid right here. I'm going to wrap it 12 times inside that loop down my fluorocarbon. So I wrap that 12 times. I'm only going to do it a couple just to show you here. Just pull it to where it's not real tight. I don't want it cinched down, but I want it, get that knot down there semi-tight. Now I take it, I spin it. Now I have my fluorocarbon tag in. I do the exact same thing. This is going to be my braid. Here's my fluorocarbon tag in. Make a loop. Now on fluorocarbon, I'm going to wrap 5 times. Same thing, wrap right through that loop, wrap it 5 times. Pull that the same way. Just get it to where it's kind of tight. So now I have my 2 knots. When they're semi-tight like that, now I'm going to slide them both together by just grabbing the main lines. My tag ends are laying loose. I pull them until the knots just touch. I don't want to pull tight just yet. I want them to just touch. So now when they touch, I grab the tag ends and the main line. Now when I pull that, the knots are going to separate away from themselves and they're going to tighten down to real tight knots. So when I pull that real tight, they're going to pull away from each other. Now, I grab the main lines and pull them together and your knot's done. And just give it a good little snug pull and your knot's done. Cut the 2 tag ends off, and now you're ready to go. The number of wraps changes when I do mono and braid on top water. The reason for that is I run 30-pound braid to 20-pound mono on top water. So the higher diameter goes in both braid or monofilament or fluorocarbon, the fewer wraps that I tie. And the reason for that, just with a heavier braid, heavier mono, if you tie the same, like if I took 30-pound braid and took 20-pound mono and went 12 and 5, my knot would be that big and it would never go through my guides when I cast it. So if I go to that 30-pound with a 20-pound, I do 7 on braid and 4 on mono. And it varies. There's a lot of people that say they do 4 and 4 on both or 5 and 5 on both. That's just what I feel comfortable with. I haven't had any problems with it. So that's what I run. Again, sit down and tie it, because if you try and do it on the water, you're going to have a difficult time getting it right. And believe me, when I first started doing it, I had a lot of problems with it breaking. And not only that, if the wind's blowing, you will look down, you'll tie that knot, and you'll stand up, and you'll be in a completely different area of the lake than when you sat down to tie that thing. I mean, it's unbelievable how, you'll mess up one time and tie it, next thing you know, if I started on Lake Mead to tie that knot, by the time I was done, I was all the way down in Havasu. So it's amazing what can happen out there. Sit down at home, go on YouTube. What I recommend is watch it, sit down, dinner table, maybe you're watching TV, tie it, cut it off. Tie it again, cut it off. Do that 25 times, do it 30 times. Do it as many times as you feel comfortable, because when you get on the lake, it's going to be 10 times harder, especially if you're in a boat, the wind's blowing. Not only that, that braid is so thin, it's about a 2-pound diameter. When that wind is blowing, it's so hard to control, especially when you're sitting there trying to tie it. Maybe your hands are cold, it gets even harder. First thing in the morning, it's low light, it makes it even harder. So sit down, tie it as many times as you can. And not only that, when I first started tying it, I was tying the knot right, but the little tricks that I've showed you, you will find when you're tying it. But see, I didn't know those tricks when I first started tying it. So I was tying the exact same knot, but I was breaking easier. So the more you tie it, the better and stronger that knot will become. How short will I let that leader go before I retie? It depends. If the water is really clear, I will keep it as long as I possibly can. So if it gets down to maybe 5 or 6 feet, I will retie it again. So really, if I retie 1 or 2 times on the lure that I'm throwing in clear water, I'll retie a new leader. If the water's stained, I'll go a little bit longer, but you know, I have it down to 2 minutes now to tie this whole setup and be fishing again. I retie. And not only that, I just feel more comfortable when I have a fresh leader on there. Because a lot of times you'll have a few little nicks up that leader somewhere that maybe you didn't know about, or maybe it's just your actual knot itself. You know, any given day in a tournament situation, I will probably retie this about 3 times in a day. If I'm throwing it all day, I will retie that leader at least 3 times a day, sometimes more. So it's just, you know, I know guys that will get down and they have a 2 or 3 foot leader and they keep fishing it. To me, I want a longer leader on it. The tag ends, how close do I cut them? I run about, I leave a little bit of extra on there. I know a lot of people will take it and cut it right, you know, as close to that knot as possible. I've always run about maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch off of both ends. It's probably longer than it needs to be, but that's just kind of how I started, because I was worried that it was going to unravel. And a lot of times, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I kept it that way. But again, I know a lot of people that will they'll cut it so short you can't see a tag end at all. But if you look at my knot, you will see a tag end on both the braid and the fluorocarbon, which can be nuisance sometimes, because the bluegill will see that little braid end will kind of fray out. It looks like a bug, and you'll get bluegill to eat that knot. I have never had a problem of it catching on the other guides. I have never run micro guides. I haven't tried on that, so I don't know. You know, a lot of the big craze right now are the micro guides. I haven't had that issue, but I haven't tried that. So standard is just fine. And you know, the bait caster too. When I run when I'm fishing a topwater, I'm using that heavier line. My knot's gonna be a little bit bigger. I run a shorter leader than I do if I'm fishing a spinning rod with a drop shot or a worm. I run probably about 3 feet. But that knot is somewhere in the guides when I cast on a bait caster. I've never had an issue of it tangling, ever. And that's where you can run into a lot of problems. If you throw a spinning rod and it hangs up just for a second on a guide, you're fine. But on bait cast, if you do that, you're going to have a giant nest right here in your reel. And I've never had that happen. So it shoots through there fine. It sounds funny. You'll hear it go through there. And it's weird fishing the first couple times. It feels funny and sounds funny when you cast it, but you get used to it, and I don't ever notice it anymore. It's crazy, because when I first tried it, I didn't like it at all. So give it a chance. You know, fish it a few times, give it the opportunity, and believe me, I feel like this has made a huge jump in my fishing over the last few years. I feel like I have a competitive edge over a lot of the guys out there because of this. So try it out. I love it.